My hands are shaking so bad right now I can barely type this out. NGL, I never thought my life would turn into one of those Reddit posts, spilling my guts to strangers. But here I am. I'm Hank, 48, supposed to be living the dream, millionaire status, everything. For years, I told myself we had it all, a rock-solid life. But that was a lie, a carefully constructed illusion that just shattered. I'm staring at my reflection in the dark office window, and honestly, the guy looking back is a stranger. Hank Miller, 48, got the big house, the fancy cars, enough money in the bank to never work again if I didn't want to. From the outside, I'm the picture of success. Inside, I'm a hollow shell, this profound misery. It's been building for years, a quiet hum beneath the surface that's now a full-blown roar. It's hard to reconcile the successful me with the kid who grew up busting his ass, dreaming of this, whatever this is. I come from nothing, basically. Blue collar, always. My dad worked the docks, my mom cleaned houses. We weren't poor, but everything was earned, nothing given. After high school, it was nom. Don't want to get into the details, but I came back with a purple heart and something else that changed my life forever. Sterility. The docs were pretty clear. No kids for me. Ever. TBH, it was a gut punch, a part of my future just ripped away. For a while, I just drifted, then I got my shit together. Used my VA benefits to enroll in engineering at Drexel. I was a man on a mission, determined to build something substantial, a life that meant something, even if it wouldn't include the pitter-patter of tiny feet. During my time at Drexel, I reconnected with Dale Swanson, an Army buddy. He was out in California studying architecture, chasing his own dreams. We'd swap stories, talk about the future. He was a good guy, a reminder of a simpler time, even though that time was war. I needed that connection, that sense of a shared past. Then I met Tiffany Evans. It was at some ridiculously loud sorority party. NGL, my first thought was rich. She had this effortless grace, a way of moving and talking that just screamed old money. She was beautiful, striking, with a confidence that both intimidated and fascinated me. We started talking, and I found myself drawn to her quick wit, her sharp mind. We clicked, hard and fast. I remember one night, pretty early on, we were talking about futures, what we wanted. I was braced for the usual white picket fence, two kids talk, ready to deflect, to eventually drop the bomb about my sterility. But Tiffany, out of nowhere, just said, I actually don't want kids, ever. My career, my freedom, it's just not for me. IDK, if I've ever felt such profound relief in my life, it was like a giant weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying, suddenly lifted. It wasn't something I had to hide or confess. It just was. We were on the same page. She'd even joke about it sometimes. Oops, forgot my pill again. Good thing we're on the same team, huh? At the time, I just laughed it off, glad we shared that bond. Looking back now, IDK, maybe that should have been a red flag. Not the no kids part, but the casualness, the way she made it seem like it was just a happy accident of alignment. I dreaded meeting her parents, Richard and Brenda Hayes. I'm Hank Miller, son of a dock worker and a cleaning lady. They were the Hayes, powerful, influential, loaded. Richard Hayes owned one of the biggest construction firms on the East Coast. I figured they'd take one look at me and dismiss me as some kind of gold digger. But to my surprise, Richard actually took to me. He saw my engineering mind, my drive, my blue-collar grit. We talked shop, and he respected that I'd pulled myself up by my bootstraps. Brenda, Tiffany's mom, was polite but a bit more reserved, though she seemed happy Tiffany found someone. My own parents, bless their hearts, welcomed Tiffany with open arms. They loved her enthusiasm, her beauty. My dad, though, he pulled me aside after she'd left one evening. "She's a nice girl, Hank," he said, his eyes scanning my face with that knowing look he always had. "But remember where you come from, and remember what you want. Don't let anyone decide your path for you." I brushed it off then, thinking he was just being protective. Now those words echo in my head like a prophecy. Then came the shocker. My parents, who had lived in that same small house my whole life, announced they were moving to Florida, retiring, buying a little place down south. It was sudden, unexpected. I was happy for them, of course, but it felt like the last tether to my past, to my roots, was being cut. Like I was truly on my own. Tiffany saw it as an opportunity. Well, with your parents moving, that frees up your old apartment money, right? We should combine funds and get a real apartment, Hank. Something worthy of us. It made sense, in a way. Our small student places weren't exactly ideal for a long-term future. So we did. And then a few weeks later, her dad, Richard, bought Tiffany a brand new BIM for Tiffany's new job, he said, beaming. A little something to get around in style. It was a gesture, sure, but it screamed money, a stark reminder of the financial gulf between us. My beat-up old sedan suddenly felt like a toy car next to it. I started feeling this unease, a low thrum beneath the surface of all the happiness and new beginnings. The Hayes family, they were everywhere. Their help, their gifts, their suggestions. It was all coming from a good place, I told myself. They loved Tiffany, and by extension, they were helping us. But I'd always prided myself on my independence, on earning every single thing. And Tiffany, she seemed perfectly content, even thrilled, with their constant help. Me, I wanted to build our life, our success. But it felt like the foundation we were laying wasn't entirely ours. After my parents moved, Tiffany and I found an apartment. Not exactly the dream home I'd envisioned, but it was practical, located pretty centrally to both our new jobs. I insisted on managing the finances. It was important to me, a point of pride, that I handle the money, especially since her parents were always doing things for her. I wanted to build our own nest egg, create our own security, not just rely on handouts. I started my job at Hayes Construction. NGL, it was demanding as hell, long hours, high pressure, but it was also incredibly rewarding. I was learning so much, working alongside guys like Dave Johnson, a grizzled old-timer who knew the industry inside and out. He took me under his wing, showed me the ropes, the real-world stuff you can't learn in a classroom. I poured myself into it, determined to prove myself, not just to Richard Hayes, but to myself. Tiffany, meanwhile, was killing it at Crown Publishing. She was sharp, ambitious, and she quickly rose through the ranks, becoming a full-fledged editor in what felt like no time. We were both on the upswing, building our careers, making good money. We started saving, putting away a decent chunk every month. But even with the growing bank account, Tiffany constantly found reasons to criticize our apartment. "It's so small, Hank," she'd say, a wrinkle of disgust on her perfect nose. "And this neighborhood? Ugh, it's almost squalid." IDK, to me, it was a perfectly decent place, a stepping stone. But for her, it was never enough. The constant complaints started to chip away at things. Our marriage, which had once felt so vibrant and exciting, began to feel strained. We were both busy, sure, but it was more than that. The intimacy, the easy laughter, the shared moments, they were fading. We were less like lovers and more like roommates, sharing a space, a schedule, but not much else. It was a slow, insidious creep, like a vine growing over a beautiful statue, slowly obscuring its form. I kept in touch with Dale Swanson. He'd call me from California, always trying to lure me out there. "Hank, man, you'd love it out here. The weather, the opportunities. We could build something real together. Just us. No family strings attached." He didn't say it, but I knew he meant the Hayes family. I'd laugh it off, tell him I was rooted here, but sometimes late at night I'd wonder, what if? Our second anniversary was coming up. I wanted to make it special, to reignite that spark I felt slipping away. I planned everything meticulously. A dozen long-stemmed red roses, her favorite. Reservations at that fancy Italian place she loved. And a gift, beautiful diamond stud earrings I'd saved up for. Something truly elegant. I imagined her face, her smile, the way she'd look at me. I even left work early, bought champagne, got everything ready. The apartment, usually a point of contention, looked warm and inviting with candles lit. Then my phone rang. It was Tiffany. "Hey, babe," she said, her voice sounding rushed, almost impatient. "Listen, I'm going to be really late. Chad Peterson's novel, it's a nightmare, absolute train wreck. I'm stuck here, pulling an all-nighter with him. Can't talk, gotta go. Love you." And then abruptly she hung up. Not even a pause, no chance for me to say anything about our anniversary. I was left standing there, phone in hand, staring at the untouched roses, the cooling dinner, the sparkling diamond earrings in their velvet box. Forgotten. It wasn't just the anniversary, it was the casual dismissal, the lack of consideration. A knot formed in my stomach. Chad Peterson. The name grated on me. I'd met him once at a Crown Publishing event Tiffany dragged me to. He was everything I despised, arrogant, smarmy, with this air of self-importance that made my skin crawl. He tried to physically dominate me in conversation, invading my personal space, practically leering at Tiffany. I remembered how she'd looked that night too. A stunning, revealing dress that hugged every curve, and she was glued to him, laughing at his jokes, hanging on his every word, seemingly oblivious to my growing discomfort, my quiet unease. It wasn't just the dress, it was the entire dynamic, the way she seemed to light up around him in a way she hadn't with me in a long time. After that event, Tiffany had talked about Chad Peterson and his genius nonstop for weeks, his brilliant prose, his groundbreaking ideas. And then, just as suddenly, she stopped. Completely. It was like he'd vanished from her vocabulary. Not a word about him, his project, nothing. At the time, I chalked it up to a new project, a different focus. Now looking back, the abrupt silence screams red flag, a massive, waving, in-your-face red flag. My paranoia started to build, slowly at first, then consuming me. I noticed her increasing emotional distance, the way she'd deflect my questions. Her phone always face down, always in her hand. The physical distance too, the way she'd subtly pull away from my touch. Our sex life? It was gone, disappeared. The occasional, almost dutiful quickie faded into nothing. Our marriage was running on autopilot, a hollow routine. That night, standing in the candlelit apartment, staring at the wasted effort of my anniversary surprise, a sickening feeling washed over me. Something was seriously, fundamentally wrong. I just didn't know what yet. A week. A whole damn week. That's how long it took me to realize Tiffany had gotten our anniversary date wrong. The date I celebrated, the date I planned, was a full 7 days before our actual anniversary. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me. Still, a desperate part of me wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, to surprise her, to remind her of what we had. So with a heavy heart, I decided to try again. I'd swing by Crown Publishing, surprise her with lunch, maybe dinner. Try to connect. I took the elevator up, intending to go to her floor, but my mind was so preoccupied, so utterly consumed by the dread, that I hit the wrong button. Ended up on the executive floor. As the doors opened, I almost crashed into Gary Thompson, the VP of something or other, a guy I'd met a few times at company functions. He was a friendly enough older dude, always had a cheerful, booming voice. "Hank, good to see you, son," he boomed, clapping me on the shoulder. "Dropping in on Tiffany, eh?" "Yeah, I thought I'd surprise her," I managed, trying to sound casual, my heart already pounding. "Well, you picked a good day. Things are finally quiet around here. That Chad Peterson project was a real headache. Glad it's finally over." Gary chuckled, shaking his head. My blood ran cold. "Over?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "But Tiffany said she was working late on it just last week. All-nighters even." Gary paused, a slight frown creasing his brow. "Oh no, that wrapped up weeks ago. Chad's just hanging around now, enjoying the VIP treatment in the executive apartment upstairs. That boy loves to milk the perks, but then he winked it conspiratorially, oblivious to the bomb he'd just dropped. The VIP apartment, upstairs. My gut twisted so violently I thought I was going to throw up right there in the pristine executive hallway. Tiffany lying to me about working late with Chad Peterson while he was just hanging around upstairs. It didn't take a genius to connect those dots. My mind raced, trying to process, trying to deny, but the evidence was screaming. I forced myself to be calm, to continue the charade. I thanked Gary, mumbled something about heading to Tiffany's office, and then practically sprinted down to her floor. I found her in her office, bathed in the glow of her computer screen. She looked up, and I saw it instantly. A flicker of alarm, visible surprise, almost fear in her eyes. She hadn't expected me. Not at all. "Hank, what are you doing here?" she asked, a little too quickly, a little too loudly. Her smile was tight, forced. Just thought I'd surprise you, I said, trying to keep my voice even, trying to hide the rage bubbling beneath the surface. Thought maybe we could grab dinner. Celebrate us. She immediately started in with the excuses. Oh, Hank, that's sweet, but you know I can't. Chad's novel. Still a mess. I'm stuck here. Another late night. Her words, the exact same words from a week ago, felt like daggers. And then I saw it, a flash of pure annoyance, exasperation in her eyes. It was fleeting, gone in an instant, replaced by her usual composed expression. But it was there, and it confirmed everything. She wasn't just lying, she was annoyed that I was interfering with her plans. Her other plans. I just nodded, a stone in my throat. Right, Chad's novel. The sarcasm was probably dripping from my voice, but she didn't seem to notice, or maybe she chose not to. Well, don't overdo it. I'll see you whenever. I turned and walked out, feeling like the biggest fool on the planet. Played. Completely and utterly played. Every promise, every reassurance, every I love you felt like an empty, hollow lie. I drove home in a haze of pure, unadulterated rage. The moment I walked through the door, my eyes landed on the pathetic, wilting anniversary roses from a week ago. They were still sitting on the dining room table, a monument to my naive hope. In a fit of uncontrolled fury, I grabbed the vase, lifted it high, and smashed it against the wall. Roses, water, shattered glass. It all exploded in a pathetic mess. I didn't care. The physical act of destruction was a momentary primal release. My suspicion had solidified into a cold, hard certainty. Tiffany was 100% having an affair with Chad Peterson. I cleaned up the mess robotically, the anger now settling into a cold, hard resolve. I waited. She didn't come home until around 1 a.m. I was in bed, pretending to be asleep, my heart hammering in my chest. I heard her come in, quietly, carefully. Then the sound of the shower. A long, hot shower. At 1 a.m. It was all the confirmation I needed. The late return, the need to wash away whatever she'd been doing. My darkest fears were now a grim reality. The next morning I got up, showered, and went to my office. My marriage in my mind was already dead. A corpse. The emotional numbness had set in, replacing the rage with a terrifying clarity. But clarity wasn't enough. I wasn't just going to accept this. I needed evidence. Hard, undeniable proof of her infidelity. Because I knew deep down that she would gaslight me, deny everything, turn it all around on me. I wasn't going to let that happen. The next day, I didn't even try to work. My mind was a whirlwind of rage and betrayal. I spent hours online searching for private investigator. I needed someone discreet, someone who could get answers without tipping her off. I found a local firm, Lee Investigations, with good reviews. I called, made an appointment for later that afternoon with Sharon Lee. The name sounded reassuringly no nonsense. Sharon was exactly what I needed, sharp, direct, no bullshit. I laid out my suspicions, the lies about Chad Peterson's novel, the VIP apartment, the late nights. She listened intently, scribbling notes. When I finished, she leaned back, her gaze steady. Mr. Miller, I can help you, but you need to understand something. Getting legally admissible evidence from a high-rise executive apartment is incredibly difficult. Privacy laws, building security. It's not like staking out a suburban house. I don't care about legality right now, I told her, my voice flat, hollow. Not yet. I just need to know. I need confirmation. I need to know if she's been sleeping with this guy. She nodded slowly. Understood. Confirmation. We can definitely get you that. We'll start with surveillance, dig into his movements, hers, see what patterns emerge. She handed me a contract outlining the services and the fees. I barely glanced at the numbers. Money was the least of my concerns. We'll start Monday, she promised. Signing that contract felt like a morbid sense of relief. Finally, I was doing something, taking control. I was no longer just a passive observer in my own unraveling life. I got home later than usual. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. As soon as I walked through the door, Tiffany appeared, eyes blazing. Where the hell have you been, Hank? And how could you forget our anniversary? I waited up for you last night. You just didn't show. She was practically spitting fire, clearly ready for a fight. ready to play the wronged wife. My own anger, which had been simmering all day, was replaced by a strange, cold calm. Tiffany, I said, my voice quiet, almost eerily so. Our anniversary was yesterday, not today. You got the date wrong. And as for the roses, I trashed them, vase and all. You want to see them? You can find the shattered remains in the kitchen trash. Her eyes widened, her tirade sputtering to a halt. The air crackled with unspoken tension. What are you talking about? She stammered, her voice losing its edge, replaced by genuine confusion. And then, a flicker of something else. Fear. I'm talking about the diamond earrings I bought for you, Tiffany. I continued, my gaze unwavering. They're in my desk drawer, still in the box. Go check. Her face dropped. The color drained from it, leaving her pale. Her eyes darted around the room, anywhere but mine. The fear was undeniable now, stark and raw. She knew. She didn't know how I knew, but she knew I knew something. Then the gaslighting started, just as I'd predicted. She took a shaky breath, tried to compose herself. Hank, what's gotten into you? This is insane. Are you having some kind of breakdown? It's been so much stress with the campaign, Chad's book. It's finally over. I told you that just yesterday, didn't I? She tried to push past me, her hand reaching out as if to touch my arm, to console me, to play the innocent, concerned wife. I recoiled subtly. Over? I repeated, my voice still dangerously calm. Is that what you call it? Yes, finally over, she insisted, her voice gaining a desperate edge. And I've been so stressed, Hank. That's why I forgot the date. Please, baby, let's talk about this. Let's fix this. Let's work on us. She was begging now, tears welling in her eyes, a performance for the ages. She truly had no idea that I knew she was lying, that every word was a calculated manipulation. I didn't escalate. There was no point. The trust was irrevocably shattered. There was nothing left to fight for in that moment. I just watched her, a hollow feeling in my chest. And then a bizarre shift happened. The rest of that week, Tiffany was home every evening, by 5 p.m., like clockwork. No more late nights, no more Chad's novel. It was an immediate, glaring change in her behavior, a direct confirmation that whatever she had going on with Chad Peterson, it was indeed over. And my timely arrival at Crown Publishing, my calm accusation, had clearly been the catalyst. I maintained a cold, distant demeanor. I watched her, observing every move, every forced smile, every attempt to get close. She tried, oh, she tried. Dinners, quiet conversation, even attempts at intimacy. But I was a ghost, present but not truly there. My mind was elsewhere, waiting. And then Sharon Lee's first surveillance reports started trickling in. Discrete messages, timestamps, locations, they confirmed everything I suspected. Tiffany's movements, her patterns, her past late nights. The hard evidence I needed was starting to take shape. Sharon Lee was a machine. Within days, her initial surveillance reports started piling up, painting a sickeningly clear picture. Multiple rendezvous, not just the VIP apartment at Crown Publishing, but also a secluded rental property out of town, a place they'd sneak off to for weekends. Each report was a punch to the gut, detailing timestamps, photographs, a timeline of my wife's betrayal. It was undeniable. My suspicions were brutally confirmed. But then Sharon started digging deeper. She found evidence of Tiffany misusing company resources, corporate car services booked for client meetings that ended up at the rental property, expense accounts padded with lavish dinners that were clearly for two, not a client and an editor. It wasn't just infidelity, it was a brazen abuse of her position, funded by the company she supposedly worked for. Seeing this pattern of deception, I gave Sharon new instructions. Broaden the investigation, I told her, my voice tight. I want to look at Tiffany's personal finances. All of them. I had a horrible feeling that there was more to uncover, a darker layer beneath the surface. And holy hell, was I right. Sharon quickly uncovered large, unexplained cash withdrawals from our joint accounts. Not just once or twice, but a consistent pattern over months. Then came the real bombshell. She found a secret bank account in Tiffany's name, an account I knew absolutely nothing about. The kind of account you open when you're trying to hide something, or someone, or a lot of somethings. Further investigation into that secret account, cross-referenced it with our joint statements, revealed the full gut-wrenching truth. Tiffany had been slowly, systematically siphoning funds from our shared savings. My hard-earned money, the nest egg I'd so painstakingly built, was being drained, funneled into her secret stash. I felt absolutely gutted. This wasn't just a physical betrayal, a broken marriage vow. This was financial fraud, a calculated, ongoing theft. It was a level of cold, cruel deception I hadn't even imagined. My wife was actively stealing from me. To twist the knife further, Sharon also found records of lavish gifts from Chad to Tiffany, expensive jewelry, designer bags, trips. It was clear this wasn't just some passionate fling. It had a transactional element, a quid pro quo. She was getting paid one way or another for her affections. The whole thing made my skin crawl. The initial hurt and shock solidified into a chilling mix of white-hot rage and cold, hard resolve. My desire for justice wasn't just an abstract concept anymore. It was a burning, visceral need. I spent countless hours in my home office, meticulously cross-referencing Sharon's PI reports with my own financial records. Every withdrawal, every transfer, every suspicious charge, I tracked it all, building an ironclad case. The more I dug, the more I saw the full, terrifying scope of Tiffany's deceptive nature. She wasn't just a cheat. She was a master manipulator, a thief. It was during this time, immersed in the cold, hard facts of her betrayal, that I realized I needed to keep this entire investigation completely under wraps, especially from Tiffany. She couldn't know I was onto her, not yet. I needed to play the long game, and Tiffany, oblivious to the storm brewing, entered a full-on love-bombing phase. Sudden affection, sweet notes, cooking my favorite meals, suggesting date nights and romantic getaways. It was a transparent attempt to smooth things over, to bring me back into her orbit, to lull me into a false sense of security. But I saw right through it. Every touch felt calculated, every smile forced, every loving word an echo of her lies. I played along, mirroring her distance, responding with polite but guarded words. I couldn't let her see the ice in my veins, the steel in my resolve. While she was busy winning me back, I was busy. Subtly, meticulously, I started moving my personal assets, key documents, investment statements, anything that was solely mine, anything I couldn't risk her getting her hands on. I put them into a safe place, a place she didn't know about. I was preparing for war. NGL, this whole process felt like I was drowning, but I knew I had to keep swimming, stick around to the end to see how life's costly choices unfold. Before I dropped the hammer, I needed to set a trap. I scheduled a meeting with Richard Hayes, Tiffany's father, under the guise of discussing a new project at Hayes Construction. I sat across from him in his opulent office, maintaining a calm, business-as-usual facade. We talked about supply chains, new materials, all the usual industry jargon. Then I casually pivoted. "Richard," I began, making eye contact, "I was just thinking about something. From an ethical standpoint, given the size of Hayes Construction and the resources we manage, I was wondering how strict the company policies are on, say, employee misuse of company resources, or even internal financial ethics." Richard puffed out his chest, a proud smile up on his face. "Hank, let me assure you, our integrity is paramount. We have zero tolerance for any kind of misuse, whether it's corporate assets, expense accounts, or any financial impropriety. We run a tight ship here. Any employee caught violating those policies, no matter who they are, faces severe consequences. We build trust, not just buildings." He was completely oblivious, practically preening about his company's ironclad ethics. I just nodded, a grim satisfaction settling in my gut. A few days later, Sharon Lee delivered her final comprehensive report. It was a thick binder, heavy with the weight of shattered illusions. Photos, meticulously organized financial records, detailed timelines, transcribed phone logs, copies of car service receipts, restaurant bills, every single piece of evidence laid out bare. It was overwhelming, disgusting, and utterly damning. The report didn't just confirm the affair, it included irrefutable evidence of Tiffany's corporate policy violations and the insidious financial fraud she'd perpetrated against me. I took a deep breath, the cold resolve hardening in my chest. Tonight was the night. I waited for Tiffany to come home, the binder sitting innocently on my desk. She walked in chirpy, asking about my day. "Fine," I said, my voice flat, "but we need to talk." Her smile faltered. She saw the serious expression on my face, the lack of warmth in my eyes. I led her into the living room, gesturing for her to sit. I remained standing, a cold, unyielding presence. "What's this about, Hank?" she asked, her voice already taking on that defensive edge. I didn't answer directly. Instead, I calmly picked up the binder, opened it to the first page, and slid it across the coffee table. The first thing she saw was a clear, high-resolution photo. Tiffany and Chad, hands intertwined, entering the VIP apartment building. Then another leaving the secluded rental property. Her eyes widened, her face draining of color. Initial shock. Then, just as I predicted, denial. "What is this? What are these pictures, Hank? This is ridiculous. Someone's trying to frame me." She tried to snatch the binder, but I held it steady. "These are doctored. You can't believe this garbage." I flipped the page. "Can these be doctored too, Tiffany?" I asked, my voice devoid of emotion, pointing to copies of her secret bank statements, highlighting the large cash withdrawals and transfers from our joint account. "And these? From your secret account?" Her denial crumbled. The gaslighting, the deflection, the attempts to blame stress or misunderstandings, they all bounced off the impenetrable wall of evidence. I remained stoic, systematically refuting each of her lies with a precise, irrefutable piece of proof. Eventually, she broke. The tears started. Real or fake, I didn't care. Okay, I admit it," she sobbed, burying her face in her hands. "I had an affair. Yes, with Chad. I was lonely, Hank. You were always working, always so cold." She was still trying to minimize, still trying to shift blame, especially on the financial part. "But the money? But that was just for little things, for stress. It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think, Tiffany." I cut her off, my voice like steel. "I know about the stolen money. I know about the company car services, the padded expense accounts, the corporate fraud you committed." My words hung in the air, heavy with accusation. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with a new kind of terror. The fraud. She hadn't expected me to know that. "No, Hank, please. We can fix this. We can work through this." "No, we can't," I said, my gaze unwavering. "The marriage is over. I'm pursuing a divorce, Tiffany, on the grounds of infidelity and financial fraud." Her face twisted into a mask of pure rage. "You can't do this to me. My father will destroy you. He'll make sure you lose everything," she shrieked, her voice echoing in the silent room. "Richard Hayes will unleash hell on you." I just looked at her, a bitter smile touching my lips. "Richard," I said, my voice calm, almost detached, "we'll get the full truth, in due course." The day after confronting Tiffany, I met with a top-tier divorce attorney. I didn't mince words. I laid out Sharon Lee's meticulous report, page by painstaking page. Photos, financial statements, timelines, corporate car service receipts, everything. The attorney, a formidable woman named Sarah, listened with a growing look of respect. When I finished, she closed the binder with a definitive snap. "Mr. Miller," she said, her voice firm, "this is one of the most comprehensive and damning cases I've ever seen. You have an ironclad case, not just for infidelity, but for significant financial misconduct. We'll protect your assets and ensure Ms. Evans is held accountable for her wide-ranging actions." It was the affirmation I needed, a validation of every sleepless night I'd spent poring over bank statements. Our strategy was clear: hit hard, hit fast, and leave no room for doubt. My next call was to Richard Hayes. I kept it brief, professional. "Richard," I said, my voice steady, "I'm calling to inform you that I intend to divorce Tiffany." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. Then Richard's voice laced with disbelief. "Divorce, Hank, what in God's name? Is this about some silly argument? We can fix this. I'll talk to her. You talk to her. This is family. He immediately went into mediator mode, assuming it was just typical marital drama, something easily swept under the rug. It's not that simple, Richard, I replied, my voice hard. It's far more serious than a silly argument. Then I dropped the bomb. I told him I had irrefutable evidence. I explained, in stark clinical detail, Tiffany's affair with Chad Peterson, the misuse of corporate resources, the padded expense accounts, the car services, and the fact that she had been stealing from our joint accounts. I omitted nothing. Richard was silent for a long moment. Then an eruption of pure fury. Are you telling me my daughter has been doing what? His voice was trembling with rage, and more powerfully, deep embarrassment. The man prided himself on integrity, on his family's impeccable reputation. This was a stain. Hayes Construction immediately launched an internal investigation. They were moving at lightning speed. Within hours, I learned that Chad Peterson had already been quietly let go from Crown Publishing. Apparently, there had been related allegations that had finally caught up to him. My evidence, combined with whatever else was already bubbling, was the final nail in his coffin. Meanwhile, Brenda Hayes, Tiffany's mother, started her own pressure campaign. Hank, please, think about what you're doing, she pleaded, her voice thick with tears. This is family. We love you. You and Tiffany can work this out. Don't throw away everything over a mistake. She appealed to family loyalty, to the years we'd spent together, desperate to keep the illusion of their perfect family intact. I stood firm. Brenda, I said calmly but firmly, this wasn't a mistake. This was a profound, calculated betrayal. Not just an affair, but financial fraud. She stole from me, from our future. There's no coming back from that. I explained the depth of the deception, the secret bank accounts, the systematic siphoning of our savings. Slowly, painfully, the Hayes family started to grasp the true severity of Tiffany's actions. The initial shock turned to a dawning realization of her culpability. The narrative of poor Tiffany, caught in a marital spat, was replaced by Tiffany, who committed fraud and brought shame upon the family name. Sarah, my attorney, wasted no time. Divorce papers were served to Tiffany, detailing every single damning allegation, backed by Sharon Lee's mountain of evidence. When Tiffany received them, her desperation reached a new peak. She called, she screamed, she threatened, she pleaded. She realized I had outmaneuvered her completely, that her world was crumbling. The divorce proceedings, predictably, turned ugly. Tiffany hired her own high-powered attorney, ready for a fight. But it was a losing battle. My evidence was overwhelming, an undeniable tsunami of truth. Every accusation she threw, every attempt at gaslighting or deflection, was met with cold, hard facts. It was devastating, but it was justice. The internal investigation at Hayes Construction was a ruthless, efficient machine. Richard Hayes wasn't playing around. They dug deep, uncovering even more details about Tiffany's misuse of company funds, how she'd leveraged her connections, her family name, to facilitate her affair and enrich herself. To protect his company's reputation, which he valued above all else, Richard was forced to take decisive action. It was swift and brutal. Tiffany was either fired or more likely forced to resign from Crown Publishing. The official reason was professional misconduct, but everyone knew the real story. The scandal, the affair, the financial impropriety, it spread like wildfire through their social circles. Tiffany, once the golden girl, the sophisticated editor, became a pariah. Her carefully curated reputation, built on an illusion of grace and integrity, was utterly destroyed. NGL, it was brutal to watch, but it was also the direct consequence of her actions. Chad Peterson, the arrogant prick, faced his own reckoning. Already quietly dismissed from Crown Publishing, the full extent of his involvement in the corporate malfeasance, coupled with his affair with a married woman, made him radioactive in the publishing world. He became an industry pariah, his career effectively dead. He got what was coming to him. Richard Hayes, still reeling from the fallout, delivered another crushing blow to Tiffany. He informed her, in no uncertain terms, that her actions had severely jeopardized her inheritance and any future involvement with the family business. The golden parachute she'd always taken for granted was now riddled with holes, if not completely shredded. The ultimate betrayal for a woman who valued status and wealth above all else. In court, Tiffany tried every trick into the book. She attempted to manipulate, to gaslight, to play the victim, to blame me for being cold or distant. But my attorney, Sarah, was a shark. Every one of Tiffany's desperate attempts was easily dismantled by the solid evidence we had. Photos, bank statements, corporate records, witness statements. It was an impenetrable wall of truth. The court ruled heavily in my favor. The judge cited Tiffany's extensive financial misconduct as a primary factor in the asset division. She didn't just have to give me back what she'd stolen, she lost far more. I secured a very favorable divorce settlement, recovering all my stolen funds and keeping my rightful assets, including the house and my investments. Tiffany, on the other hand, was ordered to repay the siphoned funds and was burdened with significant legal costs, digging herself into a deep financial hole. I felt vindicated, absolutely. Justice had been served, but the feeling was intertwined with an utter exhaustion. The ordeal had been emotionally draining, a brutal excavation of every happy memory, every shared dream, now tainted and twisted. The emotional toll was massive, leaving me feeling hollowed out. For Tiffany, the public humiliation and financial ruin were her moral consequence. Stripped of her carefully constructed image, her career, her family's financial support, and her social standing, she was left with nothing but the wreckage of her own making. It was a harsh lesson, but one she undeniably earned. Now, the slow, painful process of rebuilding my life began. I poured myself back into work, not for money this time, but as a distraction, a way to channel my energy. More importantly, I started focusing on my mental well-being, taking time for myself, trying to heal the wounds that went deeper than just the financial. I reconnected with Dale Swanson. He'd called me throughout this whole mess, offering an ear, a laugh, a distraction. "Come on out to Cali, man," he'd said. "Just for a visit. Get away from all that drama." Leaning on my old friend for much-needed support, having someone who knew me from before all this, was a lifeline. Even the Hayes family, specifically Richard, reached out. He expressed profound apologies for Tiffany's actions, clearly embarrassed and genuinely regretful. He wanted to mend ties, recognizing the injustice I'd suffered. It was a strange olive branch, offered from the ashes of their daughter's self-destruction. The first thing I did after the divorce was finalized was put the apartment up for sale. That place was tainted, a monument to a life that was never real. Selling it wasn't just about the finances. It was a necessary exorcism, a symbolic clean break from a past I desperately needed to leave behind. Every corner held a memory, now twisted and ugly. I needed it gone. Then came the new opportunity, a lucrative offer from a competing firm based in a completely different city, in a different state. It wasn't just a job, it was a lifeline, a chance to truly start over. This geographical move was the final step in my liberation. No more Tiffany, no more shadows of the Hayes family, no more ghosts of a broken life. I was going to be completely free, emotionally and professionally. Meanwhile, Tiffany's world had completely imploded. She found herself facing a significantly reduced lifestyle. The BMW was gone, sold to pay off legal debts. The lavish apartments, the designer clothes, the socialite status, all shattered. Finding new employment proved incredibly difficult. Her reputation, once impeccable, was now synonymous with infidelity and corporate fraud. Social acceptance? Forget about it. The people she thought were her friends quickly distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with her toxic mess. Her relationship with her parents, particularly Richard, remained deeply strained. He loved his daughter, but her actions had brought immense shame, and the trust was irrevocably broken. Chad Peterson, the supposed brilliant author, became a professional pariah. His complicity in the corporate fraud, coupled with the highly public affair, meant his career was irrevocably damaged. He was unemployable in any reputable publishing house, his name a byword for scandal. His moral consequences were severe and, frankly, fitting. As I packed my boxes preparing for my own new beginning, a dark silver lining emerged, sharp and clear. My sterility. All those years ago, I'd felt gutted by it. Now I saw it as a twisted blessing, I had dodged a bullet, a massive, life-altering bullet, by not having children with someone so fundamentally deceitful. The thought of co-parenting with Tiffany, of having her manipulative nature tied to me forever through a child, sent a shiver down my spine. The pain of sterility was nothing compared to the pain of seeing a child caught in that web of lies. For the first time in what felt like forever, I experienced a profound sense of freedom and inner peace. The constant anxiety, the gnawing suspicion, the desperate attempts to make sense of her behavior, it was all gone, replaced by a quiet calm, a sense of self-possession I hadn't realized I'd lost. I reflected on the painful journey, the betrayal, the fight, the legal chess game. And through it all, I recognized my own strength, my resilience. I'd faced down a hurricane of deception and emerged, battered but standing. I acknowledged the deep wounds left by Tiffany's actions, the scars that would always be there. But I also recognized the personal growth that had emerged from facing such a profound deception. I was wiser, tougher, and more self-aware. My future plans solidified. I was seriously considering moving to California eventually, to be near Dale. He was urging me to join him, to build something new together. The idea of starting fresh with a trusted friend felt incredibly appealing. It was a blank slate, full of possibilities. I learned to trust my gut instincts, that nagging feeling I'd had from the beginning. The little red flags I'd pushed aside, I'd never ignore them again. And I reaffirmed the immense importance of self-worth. I was a good man. I deserved honesty, respect, and love, not lies and betrayal. I was now truly wealthy, but not just financially. I was emotionally free from a toxic marriage, from a partner who sought to destroy me. The money was a bonus, a testament to my hard work, but the true treasure was my peace of mind. I understood that while the pro-revenge was satisfying, seeing Tiffany face her consequences, true healing came from within. From letting go of the anger, processing the hurt, and moving forward with purpose. It wasn't about her anymore. It was about me. The echoes of betrayal, once a deafening roar, have finally begun to fade, leaving behind a silence Hank hadn't known was possible. The profound consequences of Tiffany's actions ripple outward, forever altering the landscape of multiple lives. For Hank, the scars of deception run deep, a permanent reminder of the fragility of trust and the cost of misplaced love. Yet, from the ashes of a shattered marriage, he forged a new path, emerging not unscathed, but undeniably stronger, wiser, and fiercely independent. He regained his financial security, but more importantly, reclaimed his sense of self-worth and inner peace. Tiffany, stripped of her status, wealth, and reputation, faces a future defined by the wreckage of her own making, a stark illustration that while money can buy many things, integrity is priceless. Chad Peterson, too, tasted the bitter fruit of his complicity, his career and reputation permanently tarnished. The Hayes family, once a beacon of unshakable influence, now grapples with the public shame brought by their daughter's actions. This story isn't just about infidelity, it's a testament to the destructive power of deceit, the strength found in confronting profound betrayal, and the ultimate, undeniable truth that consequences, both good and bad, always find their way home.